And it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce the President and CEO of SAMCEDA, Roseanne Faust. Roseanne.
So seriously, I cannot do the things that I do running SAMCEDA without an incredible board of directors and an amazing, powerful, not a lot of people team. So Larissa Okenyatta and Ricky Hawkins are my right and left hand and my right and left leg too. So thank you. So this slide is who we are. Other groups spend a whole lot of time talking. SAMCEDA gets it done. Take a look at the 24 pages of our annual update, and you will see that we get it done. How? How do we do it? We tell your story. We are a proud champion of the business community. We love business. We love what business brings to all 20 cities and the county. We champion the innovation community, and we highlight at our Innovators event, which we held in this room in March, we highlight those up-and-coming companies that you might not have heard of. We tell their story. We connect you with them. It was great to have Mango Materials, 3 women PhD running Mango Materials. I'd say that's pretty impressive for our county. We also have a new show out on Peninsula Television, and thank you to Penn TV for filming the event today. It's called More Than the Bottom Line, because guess what? Companies are more than their bottom line. They are about community engagement, they are about corporate philanthropy, they are about Design Tech High School, they're about a whole host of things. And we are showcasing them and highlighting them and celebrating them. The Progress Seminar, we're a proud partner with the Redwood City San Mateo County Chamber of Commerce and all of the chambers in San Mateo County. What else does SAMCEDA do? We focus on what matters. We focus on what you tell us is important. Housing. Ceres Regis is in the house today. Hats off to them and all the residential development that they do. Summerhill. I could go through J. Paul and the mixed use and Sobrato and the wonderful project in Redwood City. And if I'm not saying you know you're in my heart, because all of the development community, they get bashed quite a bit. We don't do that at SAMCEDA. We celebrate them. And we're out there saying, hey, we need housing. We need good transportation. Home for All. Love my Home for All people. Carol Groom, Warren Slocum, Don Horsley, and the whole Home for All team. We have brought the jobs housing imbalance from 24-1 to 12-1 in the last 5 years to 7-1. San Mateo County, celebrate. We also don't believe in a regulatory environment that'll stop housing, hence our position, no on 10. We advocated for San Mateo County's slice of Regional Measure 3 pie. Thank you to our MTC commissioners, Warren Slocum, who's in the room, Gina Pappin, who is our most recent commissioner, and Alicia Geary, who served for 6 years. And my personal favorite, because I lived it for well over a year and a half, Measure W. We did it. We got it done. $2.4 billion for our transportation over the next 30 years. SAMCEDA members contributed $700,000 to a $1.1 million campaign. What else do? We do economic research, because you need to know what's happening and you need to know where is our economic engine in comparison to the region and the country. We connect and we partner. That's how we do things in San Mateo County. We connect and we partner. We also do events, Grow with Google. We had 100 people from Portland trying to find out our best practices. And we partner with the Business Times on Peninsula structures. We also celebrate our strengths. That's my role today, to stand up here before all of you and really celebrate. And celebrate what we're strong at, what we're good at, where we're going, where we've been. And our healthcare community. We have first-class healthcare, and they are our partners. We are very grateful for having our healthcare community. Census 2020, you're going to be hearing a lot more about it. There's a infographic in the annual update. Census 2020 is very important. It's how our representation is determined, it's funding, it's a whole host of things. Education community, all those in the education community, again, thank you. Our nonprofits, youth and family. So we touch everyone because it's very important that we recognize our education, our youth and families. But what makes San Mateo County and SAMCEDA so fantastic? We're stronger together. We work together, we play together, we celebrate together, and we actually get things done. I could not be more proud than to put up these logos because the chamber folks get things done too. And our business associations, they're all over. Our government and elected leaders. And what does SAMCEDA do? We weave it all together, weaving our region together. The main purpose of our 67th annual meeting, and it has been this way for the last several years, is to show how we weave our region together and how we do it and make all of us stronger. So I am going to introduce our first THRED Talk speaker. We have Laura Bliss, who is the West Coast Bureau Chief for the Atlantics. How many of you read the Atlantic magazine? Okay, they have a special, not a section in the magazine, it's a separate entity called CityLab. And we are so glad that Laura could be with us here today because of all of you and your work in our community. So we're gonna bring up Laura Bliss for our first THRED Talk.
My name is Laura Bliss. I'm the West Coast Bureau Chief at CityLab, which is part of the Atlantic magazine, based in San Francisco. I'm a national reporter focused on technology's influence on urban space with a focus on transportation. I think my talk is a little bit less locally focused than many of the other speakers today. I'm sort of a recent Bay Area transplant, and I cover national issues, but it's definitely a topic that's both close to my heart and certainly to issues that the whole peninsula faces on transportation, including San Mateo County and its neighbors. And it's the bus. Consider the bus. What comes to mind? For many Americans, it's the grumbling, clattering, stuck in traffic, when will it come, cars in the shop, last mobility mode of resort. Mobility mode of last resort. You might not ride it, and if you do, you might not like it. That's why we need to talk about it. The bus has rarely needed your love more, and the underdog of transit has never held more heroic potential. With urban populations and travel on the rise, transportation is now the top contributor to U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. Nearly 90% of commuters in this country drive private cars, and in many urban areas, traffic congestion, as you all are so aware, i.e. wasted time, gas, and money, is getting worse. Cities are searching for ways to move people around in fewer vehicles and leave a softer impact on the environment, with light-hail referenda, ride-hailing partnerships, autonomous shuttle pilots, dreams of aerial taxis, and more. All of these modes have a place in the urban present and future, but many cities are ignoring what is arguably the cheapest and most flexible option, general purpose option, which happens to be available already, and that is the bus. Buses can carry large numbers of people in a compact amount of road space. They don't require special rights of way, though sometimes that's ideal. They can be deployed and rerouted as needed. Across modes, they're the most affordable option to cities in terms of capital costs and often in terms of operation. And there's no inherent reason that buses have to be bottom shelf transportation. It's just that we've treated them that way. Nationwide, federal, state, and local budgets have systematically prioritized cars over mass transportation. Service cuts that tore up bus networks across the country during the recession haven't been made up for. That's largely why bus ridership declined in 31 out of 35 major metros last year. Even in cities on major rail building bonanzas like LA and Denver are watching transit ridership decline across the board, in part because investment in buses has trailed so far behind the commitment to trains. And this is a chart that's showing transit ridership since 2002. And you kind of see a drop off in transit overall, and particularly so for buses. Meanwhile, the hype around on-demand apps like Uber, Lyft, and Via fuels the notion that the future of transportation is one where traditional transit has ceased to exist. Where we're going, we don't need buses, I'm told. We'll take flying Ubers or subterranean Teslas or something even newer and shinier. And while those modes may indeed have a place in the urban future, the bus, which has been around for centuries, is pretty vulnerable to that kind of end is nigh narrative. Suburban communities in Florida, Texas, California, and beyond have replaced old bus routes with subsidies for demand response services and hope for the best. Cities like San Francisco and New York have watched 8 to 12-seat semi-flexible microtransit shuttles follow routes almost identical to popular bus lines, but with mixed success because these are operators who expect to turn a profit. In one story I recently reported in a town in Ontario in Canada, which subsidized Uber rides in lieu of a traditional bus line, found riders dismayed when there was a cap eventually placed on the number of rides that they could take. And one woman told me that she would never hear a bus driver in Toronto tell her that she'd run out of trips that she was allowed to take. Part of the downturn in bus ridership has been attributed to the rise of ride-hailing, as fewer Americans who can afford other options choose the bus. Who could blame them? In many cities, buses are painfully slow, they arrive with big gaps or all bunched together. Their routes and schedules can be Byzantine and inscrutable, and a rider's ability to track them in real time is woeful. They break down a lot. More than 17% of the bus systems in the US are in a state of bad repair, according to the most recent FTA report. And in most spread out unwalkable cities, you'll get there faster with almost any other mode. And this is a map of transit agencies around North America that have partnered with ride-hailing agencies to supplement transit, which might be, in some cases, great. But as I was sort of pointing out, sometimes it's to make up for cuts. So who's left? The individuals riding buses to jobs, to shopping, to medical care tend to be poorer than the average commuter. They are disproportionately people of color, reinforcing the racial stigma associated with the bus in many areas. Some bus riders, can't tap into Uber-like services because they can't afford to, or they use a wheelchair, or don't own the necessary technology. If your transportation options are limited, you need the bus now, maybe more than ever. And even if you're not a regular passenger, you need it too. It's not hard to see how the trend of deprioritizing buses will continue to harden in the age of on-demand door-to-door rides. The problem is our streets can't fit them. If you care about how well your city moves, how your local economy is faring, and how the planet's future fares, then you care about the city bus, and you care about making it better. You want to see the bus as a piece of social infrastructure that the whole city or metro area can take pride in, a sign of prestige, not decay. Because it turns out that when rubber-tired fleets are treated as a mighty social good, people do willingly hop on. So see the Minneapolis A-line, where buses are essentially held to the standards of rail service. They get first go at traffic lights, accept boardings at every door, stop every half mile rather than every block. Lots of cities have followed the example of Houston, which overhauled its bus route network in 2015 and saw a pretty substantial ridership jump. And look most of all at San Francisco, Phoenix, and Seattle in particular, which this slide is showing a GIF from, which are the only cities where bus ridership has meaningfully ticked up in recent years because they've all had citywide plans to fund and improve service. And that kind of attention has been missing, I think, in a lot of places. So to bring it back to me, that's why I've really focused on buses as part of the future of transportation, I think more than many other reporters cued to the same topics. I try to look at what's working on bus systems across the US with the belief that there's really no inherent reason that they can't be great, reliable forms of transportation. I look at which cities are sort of winning the battle to prioritize road space, where the gold standard is being set for frequent, fast, and reliable service, and how those kinds of offerings can really change the vision for future of transportation visions. And I also look at how technology can improve those fundamentals. Automation is definitely coming, and it could transform surface transit too. Sharper GPS and smartphone tools can really transform the experience of riding and the expectations around it. electric buses can banish the grumble and smoke of the diesel era. And the idea is certainly not to be anti-Uber or any other emerging mode, but just to say that in addition to these new services, longstanding options are here to stay, and they have a lot to add. After all, it's telling that even while transit agencies are being told to be more like Uber and Lyft are also mimicking buses in many ways. Both companies have shuttle and line services, and some of them have preset stops and routes that operate during certain hours, similar to a bus. And it's existential for the future of these companies, right, to stop subsidizing high-end solo rides, by and large, and get more riders per vehicle. In other words, the basic model, a large moving container with lots of people in it, hasn't stopped working, but from what I can tell, it's time to make it a lot better. So thank you, and if you liked what you heard or want to read more, I invite you to visit CityLab.com, and I'm sorry that the link is so washed out, but part of the Atlantic, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Ms. Laura Bliss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. And now we have Colleen Cassity, who heads up Oracle Giving and the Oracle Education Foundation. Colleen?
Thank you again. So I like this book that came out a couple of years ago called Rules for a Night. It's 21 rules and little stories about how to be good, how to be a good knight, how to be a good friend, how to be a good citizen. One of the rules is humility. It says, never announce you are a knight, simply behave as one. And when I joined Oracle several years ago to start the Oracle Education Foundation, this was pretty much our MO with respect to philanthropy and corporate social responsibility. Do the right thing, don't toot your horn. Humility is a virtue, that's true. The companion truth is that there is a time and a reason to make your case. Now is that time for companies like ours. And the reason is that good corporate citizenship matters, and people want to hear about it, now more than ever. So in recent years, Oracle's MO has changed, and we've begun actively telling the story of our sincere and effective philanthropy, of our commitment to sustainability, and of our passion for education, which has been the beating heart of Oracle corporate citizenship for more than 2 decades. So I'd like to share a little bit of that story with you today, starting with our 3 focus areas, which are advancing education, protecting the environment, and strengthening communities. And dividing things up this way is a useful storytelling device, right? It makes sense, and it's a good way to organize work. But to imagine that all of these aren't interconnected, it just wouldn't be true. Education happens in the context of a community, and every community on this planet exists within the natural world. Every single one of these things is connected. Let's talk a little bit about Oracle volunteering. Oracle volunteers support nonprofit and non-governmental organizations around the world to advance education, protect the environment, strengthen communities, and they've been doing that for 25 years. Oracle employees are encouraged to volunteer up to 40 hours a year during the workday with their manager's permission, and beyond work, they can go crazy, and we hope that they do. Our FY19 results are still rolling in, but looking at FY18, you can see that Oracle volunteers donated nearly 97,000 hours of their time and skills to organizations around the world. Oracle Giving supports nonprofit organizations with cash, sponsorships, and a company match to employees' donations to their favorite causes. Last year, we gave $20 million in cash. We matched $2.5 million worth of employee gifts to disaster relief campaigns and their favorite nonprofit organizations, supporting 4,600 organizations around the world total. I think one way to understand this is to look at a few themes, and I had many, many more of them for you, but I asked Roseanne how much time I had, and she said 10 minutes, so I'm speeding through, picking just a few. So one of them is addressing the gender gap in technology. Not surprisingly, Oracle supports organizations that ignite and stoke students' interest in computer science and the incredibly fruitful and generative intersection of STEAM disciplines: science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Why are we a fan of STEAM rather than STEM? Because it's more. It has the arts, and the arts are an especially effective way to engage girls. If we want to increase diversity and opportunity for women in technology, we need to start by investing in computer science and STEAM education for young women and girls. We also support a number of organizations that advance the practice of design thinking, which is a human-centered approach to problem solving that emphasizes empathy, creativity, prototyping, and iteration. We're practitioners, and we put our money where our mouth is in terms of supporting organizations that teach this method. A healthy ocean is absolutely essential to life on this planet. More than half of the oxygen that we breathe is produced by phytoplankton, which is why Oracle is a long-term supporter of a National Geographic mission program called Pristine Seas, which is identifying, surveying, restoring, and protecting the last wild places in the ocean and in the future on land as well. Pristine Seas has done 26 expeditions. 19 of those areas are now marine protected areas, parks in the sea. They represent, I know, yeah, that's worth, yeah. 5 million kilometers of protected area, of new protected area. Closer to home, we fund the wonderful Marine Science Institute here in Redwood City, the Marine Mammal Center out in Sausalito, and many others. We also support organizations that are developing the next generation of environmental stewards and citizen scientists that provide children and young people with environmental field science education and immersive outdoor experiences so that they will understand, care about, and protect the natural world and wildlife. Since 1990, Oracle has been a major supporter of the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund. And in 2014, we entered into a cloud partnership with them so that today we host for free their 50 years worth of data, which they collect 365 days of the year, on the mountain gorillas of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, who share 96% or more of their DNA with us. And we host this data for them with a grant that is renewable pretty much in perpetuity. And they make this data available to scientists for free to advance their studies. We're very proud of this partnership. Oracle is also a member of the Stanford Medicine Corporate Partners Program. This is a long-term partnership between Stanford Medicine and some of the world's leading companies looking at transformative research and ways to provide better healthcare delivery. Oracle's grant of $25 million over the last 10 years has helped to build the new Stanford Hospital, and we can't wait to see it come online. We also support organizations that help individuals, families, and children experiencing homelessness and generally in need with supportive housing, transitional housing, services, and affordable housing that helps them get back on their feet and return to self-sufficiency. Around the world, Oracle supports food banks, donating more than $200,000 a year and countless Oracle volunteer hours. Sustainability is inherent in the way that we think about and approach just about every dimension of our business, from operational efficiency to product development to employee engagement. We have some wonderful people right here at this table in front of me who are responsible for doing that. With more than 25 million square feet of real estate in our portfolio, we know that the way that we manage our use of resources can have a huge impact. So Oracle is deeply committed and has aggressive goals set that it regularly meets and exceeds to minimize our greenhouse gas emissions, maximize our energy efficiency, reduce the amount of water we consume and waste we generate. Now to education, the heart of Oracle corporate citizenship, and admittedly, the first among equals in our trifecta of education, environment, and community. The Oracle Academy is a program that donates curricula, cloud services, cloud services, and training and resources to educational institutions around the world for teaching use, more than 15,000 of them, touching millions of students every year. The Oracle Education Foundation is a nonprofit organization that is funded by Oracle and staffed by Oracle employees. It is reinventing education by helping young people develop the technical acumen, creative confidence, empathy, and grit to be outstanding designers of solutions to people's needs and the world's problems. Oracle volunteers not only can, but are encouraged by our CEOs to volunteer up to 100 hours a year with the Oracle Education Foundation. In the Foundation's program, Oracle volunteers coach students through classes at the intersection of design thinking and STEAM disciplines. Students learn coding, electrical engineering, and human-centered design from real practitioners, and then they apply those learnings and knowledge to design challenges in a wide variety of domains, everything from 3D printing and design to IoT, AI, wearable technology. And who are the students in that program? To date, they are the students of Design Tech High School, also known as the D-Tech Dragons. And we met the founders of Design Tech High School back in 2014 when we were in the process of designing the Foundation's new program, the one that I just described to you. D-Tech had not opened its doors at that time, but when we heard about this school's model and the fact that it invited the community into students' educational experience for 2 weeks at a time, 4 times a year, focused on extreme personalization, teaching their students to put knowledge into action, and taught design thinking as the default problem-solving approach, a value that we share, we were blown away, and we knew that they had huge potential. What they didn't have was a home. We had the land, the wherewithal, and the will to provide them with that home, and so we did. Yeah. Here's what it looks like when that all comes together.
Like go to spots where you're not going to be in contact with another person for hours at a time. You're way out in the wilderness most of the time, 20, 30 miles from any place. I'm 79 years old and I can ride a motorcycle, no problems whatsoever, so I keep doing it. If you have a flat or you have wire wrapped around your sprocket, I've been in situations like that where I didn't have the proper tools and you just feel a panic because you know I'm going to be here for a good while until I can figure out how to take care of this situation. And the trail lift is one of those tools that makes us much more complete in being able to say, let's go riding.
Students need a way to prepare to be successful in a changing world, and one of the best ways that they can do that is to learn design thinking. It starts with empathy. You've got to understand the pain points of the person you're designing a solution for before you can really come up with something effective. What brought these students together with Ralph was the Oracle Education Foundation's 3D design and production class. The Foundation's classes teach design thinking and technology. And in this particular class, the users for whom students were designing solutions were members of the community aged 70 or older.
And the subject came up of what was one of your needs or what was the things you wanted to talk about. When I first thought about it, and I went on the internet, I couldn't find anything. And I thought of telling the 4 students, all you need is a way to lift the bike up easily with a lightweight tubular effect.
I mean, it looks perfect. Like, it looks almost too good to be true. Yeah.
If it works, it would be perfect.
Yeah.
I was just totally impressed in their maturity and their personalities.
If we can iterate off this prototype and design a more complete prototype of it, we can take it to be machined.
And then we went over to Weber Fabrication. Pete Weber gave them an excellent tutorial of what it takes to do that kind of work.
It's been great seeing what it's like in here and how much work goes into making these things.
What was nice, I thought, was that they rendered it in an isometric view so that a person who had never seen it before could quite quickly see what was happening.
For such a simple item, it had to be lightweight, packable. It had a number of little parameters that just made it work or not work.
The thing that was made today will be and should be tested. I think it's going to be a success.
By having this neat little tool, I'm prepared a whole lot more, even emotionally, I guess, because it's there. And in 2 minutes, I can do the process to get the job done, get me back riding again.
I just love that story. Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you. To conclude, for Oracle, good corporate citizenship means applying the same level of sincerity and commitment and rigor to changing lives and protecting the natural world as it does to building cutting-edge technologies for our customers. It means being intentional and thoughtful about the value that we create as a company for our people, our planet, and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you to Colleen Cassity from Oracle, and now we have Barrie Hathaway from JobTrain. Barrie?
Notes, me. Let's see how this goes. I want to get you thinking about possibilities here. What if I told you that a teenage high school dropout who'd run away from home, very defiant the whole time, will go on to create an award-winning program that helps hundreds of young people on the path to success? Would you be surprised to learn that I'm going to count these off, incarcerated, homeless, man in recovery will go on to run a major chain restaurant, hire scores of formerly incarcerated workers, and bring the rating of that national store into the stratosphere? I think I'm supposed to be advancing my slides. Bear with me here. Here we are. That's a JobTrain. That's the teenager. This is the incarcerated man. Well, meet Davida and Jeff, and they have done just that. People like Davida and Jeff exist in our communities, but are too often overlooked. Why? Because they simply don't have the skills employers need. What if we could get those skills into their hands? What if we could take these once unstable lives, make them stable, and doors open up for them? My name is Barrie Hathaway, and I'm the CEO of JobTrain, a workforce development nonprofit in Menlo Park, on the board of Menlo Park in East Palo Alto. And JobTrain has been doing this work for many years now, for over 50 years, helping people on a pathway to success. In the San Francisco Bay Area where we live, 1.6 million people are living in poverty. This is our place where we live. Half of them are working. And in a region where unemployment is at an all-time low, we still have people and families unable to make ends meet. I'm talking about people like you and me, hardworking, dedicated, and talented. And there's no question that now more than ever, employers need these people to be skilled up as well. So JobTrain is an organization that comes and fills in that gap, that is helping men and women who are low income but talented and capable skill up and get ready to get onto this pathway to economic mobility. And we do this in a number of ways. We have what we think of as a three-step process. Now I'm gonna ask you to hold on to this idea of 3 steps because a little bit later I'm gonna come back to this. The first step in our process is really helping somebody who's very low income. And not everybody who comes to JobTrain is low income, but not everybody who comes is unstable. But if they are, if they need housing security, food security, access to benefits, then they can get access to those things at JobTrain. The next level of our program is a basic skills program. So now I'm stable and I'm ready to start upgrading. I may not be ready yet for career pathway because I have some things I need to get fixed and in place. Things like get my high school diploma or a GED, improve my English skills with ESL training, maybe digital skills to be ready for the digital workplace. So I'm upgrading my skills. These are valuable to me in the moment, but they also prepare me for the third level of JobTrain's program, which is intensive career training. This is career training that helps somebody get a start in an emerging or very well situated career pathway. At JobTrain, right now, that looks like 4 different career pathways. That's the healthcare pathways, a technology pathway, a construction trades pathway, and a culinary arts pathway. These 3 steps are what we think of as the steps to economic mobility, and they make up a sort of an on-ramp for a very low-income person to make it into these great careers. And I'm here to tell you that this really works. How do I know it works? Well, first of all, in 2018 alone, about 500 men and women went through our career training program. JobTrain has, the outcomes for JobTrain are so good that when I was applying for the job, I didn't believe it. And it's not that I didn't believe it, it's that I couldn't imagine it. How could they be this good? For instance, of those 500 people who come into the training program, almost 90% of them will make it all the way through 11 weeks full-time intensive training. And of those people who do make it through, 80% are securing jobs. Very importantly, earning an average wage of about $45,000 a year. Let's call that $22 an hour, because we're going to come back to that too. And very importantly, a year later, because we always track for at least a year, 81% of those graduates are still working. So this is a program that really works. Remember Davida and Jeff? I'll tell you a little bit more about them. So Davida ran away from home, dropped out of high school, found herself basically barely able to make ends meet from a housing perspective, and her hope was diminishing rapidly. Like a lot of people who come to JobTrain, she was referred by a family member. Her sister, in fact, convinced her that ultimately she should come to JobTrain and see what JobTrain might have for her. She did eventually come, and she did eventually enroll in the training program. If you came to our Breakfast of Champions, you met Davida. She's quite an amazing young woman. But Davida did very well in our culinary arts training program, did an internship right after the program, and got a job right after that. And now the magic for Davida and so many of the people in our community started to happen. The reality is that Davida was so unstable in her life, she couldn't even really begin to dream about what her future could be. Now she's got a job, she's getting a regular paycheck, she's stable, and she begins to think about, who am I and what do I want to do? For her, it was helping young people just like her. And today, Davida has designed tremendous award-winning programs that are helping hundreds of young people just like her on a pathway to success. Then there's Jeff. Jeff is the blonde-haired man in between the 2 women there. Jeff came to JobTrain while he was still incarcerated on a furlough program that the San Mateo County jails, unique in the Bay Area, allows people to come from incarceration to a training program while they're incarcerated. He also went through our culinary arts program. Jeff finished the program and got a job while incarcerated at Panera Bread and worked at Panera Bread until he was released. And upon release, Jeff was seen, he stayed at Panera, and he was seen as a very strong worker, creative, leaderly, and within a couple of years, Jeff had been promoted to general manager of this Panera Bread store in San Francisco. Along that time, he proceeded to hire scores of JobTrain graduates, and they together raised the rank of this Panera Bread store, and they ranked all the stores across the nation from number 864 in the nation to number 3 in the nation. This is talent. People like Davida and Jeff exist in our communities, and there are a lot of JobTrain graduates just like Davida and Jeff. I could stand here all day and tell you stories about the people that I've met and that I know. This good work, these high success rates, really make for an incredible return on investment that should catch the eye of any investor. We know that for every dollar that's invested in JobTrain, $2 will be returned within the first year in terms of increased income and reduced government spending. And because we've been around for a long time, we know that 50% or 70% of our graduates will still be working in the field 10 years later, and that is compounding that return on investment year over year. So now what's next for JobTrain? First of all, I want to say, if you're with me, you understand that this program really works. And so part of our strategic plan and part of our future is building on this model that works. We're needed. We're still needed in this community. The programs we do work. And so what we're doing in this element of building on what works, we're refining our programs. We're improving them, and we're expanding them to other communities in the Bay Area. You remember that 3 steps to economic opportunity, and you may have noticed that I said that our average wages are about $22 an hour. Does anybody here, I'm going to ask you to hold the number in your head. How much do you think it costs a family of 4 to make ends meet in the San Francisco Bay Area? Salary per year. Hold the number in your head. It's $117,000 depending on which study you use. $117,000 a family needs to earn an income. 2 parents working, $31 a year. Our average wages, $22 an hour. Outstanding, best in class, not enough. So a big part of our future going forward is adding a 4th step to those steps to opportunity, which is really about advancing careers, really about moving people, once they're in their career, much more quickly up the ladder, earning more money. And finally, we know very well that the only way we're going to be successful is if we have good relationships with employers and we understand what you need, and we're making sure the people that we work with are getting the skills you need so you would be happy to hire them. And in the end, it's all about a simple phrase, a simple idea that stability creates opportunity. If I'm poor and I'm struggling to make ends meet day over day, I am unable to access the opportunity in front of me. The reality is that there are a lot of men and women in our community who've gone through JobTrain who are stable. They're passing that stability on to their families. They're passing that stability on to their communities. And it creates a whole new generation of inspiration. And dreams do happen when we become stable and we are able to share that with our families. Just ask these folks. And thank you very much.
Thank you to Barrie Hathaway, JobTrain, and now we have Alicia John-Baptiste, the brand new CEO of SPUR. Alicia?
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Alicia John-Baptiste. I'm CEO at SPUR, and SPUR is a member-supported urban policy organization. We work for good government, good planning, through research, education, and advocacy. And we do a lot of work in San Francisco, San Jose, and Oakland. We also keep a regional perspective. And so what I'm going to talk about today is the work we've been doing to develop a regional strategy for the Bay Area, looking out to 2070. And the process that we've been engaging in has been to think about where are we today? What are the trends and forces that are at play in the region that will shape our future? Where do we want to go? And depending on where we want to go and where we are, what are the steps that we need to take in order to achieve this vision? And we're looking at 2070, this 50-year time horizon, for a couple of reasons. And the first is that we can see today the impact of decisions that we made 50 years ago, whether that was to build BART or to pass Proposition 13. We also wanted to put ourselves in a position where we could think beyond what we consider to be our existing political or technological constraints. So we have these two buckets that we've been working with, forces and trends. And forces are things that from a regional scale, we really cannot control. They're things that we have to be able to respond to. And then trends are things that we can actually come together to shape the outcomes of. Looking at the key forces at play. So the first, climate change is now unstoppable. We know that even if we were to eliminate our carbon emissions tomorrow, there's enough junk in the system, that's a technical term, to mean that we will be dealing with the repercussions of climate change for millennia to come. Similarly, we will have an earthquake at some point in time in the Bay Area. We know that there is a 33% chance of a 6.7 magnitude earthquake along the Hayward Fault alone over the next few decades. So the question is, how will we prepare? We also have an aging population and a population that is becoming more diverse. So as we think about the future of work and the various systems that we use collectively to support ourselves as a region, how do we design those in such a way that they serve people of all different backgrounds, all different ages and abilities? Automation is having a big impact on our future employment. How will we adapt our education and workforce development systems as we see these trends come into play? The federal government has massive impact on us as a region, whether it is immigration policy, taxation policy. The federal government also has pretty consistently divested from investment in infrastructure over the years, whether that's transportation or housing. So as a region, we really have to come together to figure out how we resource our collective systems. Turning to the trends, the things that we can work together to shape. We have obviously a booming economy, but our future prosperity is not guaranteed. It's hard to remember this now, but we actually lost employment between 2000 and 2010. And that did coincide with the dot-com bust. It coincided with the Great Recession. But we also know we've been in one of the longest periods of economic boom in history recently. We have an incredible shortage of housing in the region. Since 2000, we've added about 1 million people to the 9 counties. We chose not to build 700,000 units that would have been necessary to meet demand over that same period of time. So what we're seeing is a shift in our demographics where we've lost 300,000 households earning $100,000 or less from the region. We've gained 625,000 households earning $100,000 or more. We have this general sense that the lower income folks are moving to the outer counties, the ones that are right next to the 9-county Bay Area. And when we look at the data, we see that that is true. In the outer regions, we've seen an increase in the number of households earning between 50 and 75,000. But even in the outer counties, we're seeing a decline in the number of folks earning less than 50,000 a year. And it might be appealing to think, well, booming economy, everybody's getting wage increases, that's why we've seen these demographic changes. But we also know that our wages have been quite stagnant at both the middle and lower income ends of the scale. We're really only seeing true growth in wages at the upper ends of the economic echelons. So unsurprisingly, in the Bay Area, we see inequality on the rise. This is an issue that is not Bay Area specific. It is something that is playing out nationally. It's playing out across countries in the developed world. But today in the United States, there are 400 people who have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 150 million people. That is a concern when it comes to questions of social cohesion. Transportation. We have designed our systems to be centered around the car. Laura was speaking this earlier in her presentation, excuse me. And so what we have today is an increase in the number of people who are super commuting. And then another question for us. We're very well represented at a local setting in the Bay Area. We have lots of local governments, we have lots of special districts, lots of different ways that we manage ourselves. Where we have fewer institutions is at a regional scale, which makes it more challenging to address some of the issues that we face from a regional action perspective. So as we think about where we want to go, we've really rooted our vision in the concept that we can have a region that is equitable, that is sustainable, and that is thriving. How do we get there? And we have a lot of questions that we're still answering, but I'm going to offer a couple of pathways today. So this concept that climate change is unstoppable and we must adapt. We've been working with the San Francisco Estuary Institute to tackle this question of shoreline adaptation, keeping in mind that the bay itself is heterogeneous, that there are systems at play that are at the bay scale in terms of physical processes, that sea level rise really doesn't care where we drew the lines on the map in terms of our jurisdictions, and so we need to actually follow nature's lead and look at the bay from the standpoint of what does nature suggest that we do in this particular part of the bay, and then develop a suite of solutions to implement adaptation at that scale. And we've been very excited to see San Mateo County really leading in this. San Mateo County has been using this specific set of tools and then taking it to the next level by doing social analysis too, to ensure that the adaptation strategies are correct for the cultural context. On the transportation side, how do we change our system so that we are not so centered on the car? How do we give people real, viable alternatives to driving alone and driving hours and hours every day? We believe that a starting point for this is in establishing a mega-regional rail system. This is a system that builds off of our existing infrastructure, adds a couple of key missing pieces, and then allows us to move anywhere within the 9 counties in 60 minutes or less, which sounds like a dream today, but this is achievable. Or within the mega region, the 21 counties, in 90 minutes or less. If we organize ourselves to think about a system that then has hub stations along the rail, we also unlock a lot of land use opportunity. A lot of ability to do development, but also an opportunity to do asset creation for the low-income communities where many of these potential stations would exist. So that rail becomes an opportunity for asset creation rather than a threat of displacement. We have a lot of questions that we're still grappling with. And one of them is, how do we build enough housing? We believe that to meet our affordability goals, we will need to build 2.5 million housing units in the next 50 years. Our high year as the Bay Area, we produced somewhere around 40,000, and that is when we were really still embracing sprawl. So how does this become feasible? How do we sustain our economic prosperity? It is not a guarantee, and we want to make sure that as we are building a thriving economy, it is really reaching all of the folks who live here. We have billions of dollars of investment need in our infrastructure, whether that's on housing, transportation, or climate. How do we find resources to invest sustainably into the systems that we need? And then finally, how do we organize ourselves? How do we make sure that we have set ourselves up so that we can both see issues at a collective scale and act from that standpoint? So a lot of questions still to come, and this can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming. I just hearken back to, we have shown so much leadership as a region over the years. We have led, of course, on technological innovation, on economic innovation, but we've also led on environmental stewardship, we've led on social inclusion. So I have tremendous faith and optimism that we can do this. And to steal Roseanne's line, we're looking forward to working with SAMCEDA to get it done, and we are stronger together, and we look forward to working with each of you. Thank you.
Thank you to Alicia John-Baptiste, the new CEO of SPUR, and our last speaker today, and it is extremely timely considering some of the things that have happened in our country, especially Virginia Beach, not that long ago. Nancy Magee, Honorable Nancy Magee, the Superintendent, San Mateo County Office of Education.
Hello to all of you. It's really great to be here. I want to begin by thanking Roseanne Faust and SAMCEDA for inviting me to speak today. This is a story of success for San Mateo County. We have so many leaders in the room who've been doing this work to weave safety nets together across the county for our children. And it truly is a success story, but it's an ongoing story that needs continuing work. As we know, children are our most valuable asset in our community, so each one of us has a role to play. One of the sobering realities of our contemporary society is mass casualty violence. In fact, on May 31st, only 10 days ago, we lost 12 people and had 4 people seriously injured in Virginia Beach who were injured by a disgruntled employee. So none of us can escape this sobering fact. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is the ways in which, is to inspire the idea that we actually can do something, that there are things that we can do, and we're going to do that by working across partnerships, by working across disciplines, by working across agencies to weave these nets together. And I want to share the story of what we've done so far in San Mateo County. But before I do that, I want to begin with a little bit of personal context. I began my career as an educator in San Diego. I was a high school English teacher for 17 years. I enjoyed the routine of preparing lessons for my students, engaging with students, coaching athletes, mentoring my fellow teachers. And then one day, March 5th, 2001, that all changed when a 15-year-old freshman boy came to his school, with his father's weapon loaded, and he proceeded to fire indiscriminately for several minutes until at the end of that, we had lost 2 students, 1 freshman, 1 senior. 13 people were injured. A community was shattered in the process. So for me, sometimes things can knock you down hard. This one took the breath away, and it was hard to recover. But what we know is that we have to keep on going. We have to be able to heal and move forward. We have communities out there who are going through the process of healing all over America because of this challenge that we face. I've seen the cycle now over and over and over again. It begins with, I can't believe that it happened here. I could never imagine that this was going to happen to us. And there's a barrage of media. The story gets told over and over again. There's funerals, there's mourning, then there's outcry and outrage, there's political fallout, and then everybody moves away and the community is left to try to heal itself. One of those communities that's still healing is the Newtown community. This is where the San Mateo County story begins, is December 14th, 2012, when this national tragedy shook our psyche, where we lost 20 6- and 7-year-olds and 6 educators to an act of senseless violence. And what happened on that day was the leaders of San Mateo County stood up and came forward and said, we must do something. The question was, what can we do in this community to strengthen our schools, to strengthen our safety? So what we did in this very room, only 4 months later, was convene all the leaders of the various stakeholder groups together to discuss. We spent a very deep day in community learning and conversation, and everyone left that room with a commitment to do their part. So what we ultimately ended up with was a year of very deep work. And what these circles and what these threads represent here are school safety. We developed the Big Five protocol. I'll talk about that in a minute. We went very deep on mental health work and how do we coordinate and communicate across the county. And how do we work on the legal aspect of all this so that we actually can connect the dots when it's important and try to help students recover from deep crisis. What came out of it is the Coalition for Safe Schools and Communities. It's an ongoing group of community members who provide leadership and vision for this ongoing effort. This is not something we can ever stop, but one of the things that we have accomplished is the Big Five protocol. Imagine that you're trying to create a common language across the county with 23 school districts and 20 municipalities, each with their own way of talking and doing things. So how do you create something and help everybody adopt this common language? Well, everybody has to lean in. Remember when we're rooted back in the tragedy of Newtown, this is the time to step outside your comfort zone and your boundaries and try to make something happen together. So what we did develop was a county-wide protocol that we currently share and train and practice all over from East Palo Alto to Bayshore and Daly City. One of the most effective things we're doing through the coalition is threat assessment. Threat assessment is when young people express the desire to do harm, and sometimes they're just saying words or reacting, and sometimes they have serious intent. How do you determine which is which? So this is the timeline of the effort we've invested in the San Mateo Coalition threat assessment process. 6 years of work. You can see that in 2018, we actually rolled out the protocol. And in 2019, it's been so successful that there is now an adult threat assessment process that follows the same set of tools. This is a graphic of an information sharing agreement that was crafted in 2015 that essentially says, we understand the rules of information sharing, we agree to follow them, and we're going to lean in together and work on this. This is signed by all the leaders of San Mateo County. 30 different leaders are on this piece of paper. Since we've implemented the threat assessment process, we have a level 1, which is at the school level. If something is too complicated or more concerning, it gets referenced up to the level 2 team. The level 2 team works at the county. This graphic indicates the number of cases that have been heard in the last year by the level 2 team in San Mateo County. And what's happening in these threat assessment protocols is everyone is pooling their resources. How do we help this student? How do we support this family? How do we provide support to the school district so that this student can move back into health and away from the juvenile justice system? This is our threat assessment team. It meets every Monday for as long as they need to, but typically 2 hours. They hear the cases that get referenced up. These are all partners from across our different departments, our Board of Supervisors, and they're doing amazing work. This is the final where we've gotten to with the Coalition for Safe Schools and Communities. I started with safety nets. These are all the different safety nets that we've been working on and created trainable materials that we're supporting school districts across the county every single day. So I can't think of anything that's more important to step across lines, step across divisions, and weave together than ensuring the health, wellness, and happiness of the children in our community. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you to Superintendent Magee. Thank you to all of our, let's give a San Mateo County thank you. We have some upcoming events that are up on the screen. Thank you so much for your support of SAMCEDA. Thank you.